Welcome to another episode of Agent Provocateur. I'm Allan Walsh with Adam Wylde. Our special guest this week needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyways. Hailing from the great state of New Jersey, he's been drumming professionally since the age of 7. A great fan of the game of hockey and the New Jersey Devils, a former hockey dad, longtime member of Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, the author of the fabulous book, The Big Beat, 16 years with Conan O'Brien on Late Night and The Tonight Show, a member of the Planning and Zoning Board of Delray Beach, Florida, a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the leader of his own Jukebox Band, currently playing shows all across the United States. Let's give a big welcome to the Mighty Max Weinberg.
Well, thank you so much, Allan. It's a pleasure to be with you. And it's wonderful to hear my resume. I guess I'm sort of the different drummer you always heard about. I've got sort of my hand in a lot of different pies, but congratulations on the podcast. I'm delighted to be here with you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have you. So, Max, do you remember the first time Bruce referred to you as the Mighty Max Weinberg?
Well, I remember it was during the first tour that I did, which was so long ago, it didn't have a name. It was the fall 74 tour when I joined the band. I auditioned in August of 1974, got with Bruce and the E Street Band, and literally went on the road 10 days later. And, you know, it was alliterative, Mighty Max, MM, but it was also, his nicknames for people distill the essence of their sort of performance ethos. So you have the big man, Clarence Clemens. He's the biggest man you've ever seen. Miami Steve, because he hated cold weather. So Mighty, the way I played the drums was, sort of take no prisoners. And someone once described my drumming style, particularly when I was younger, as I played the drums as if they owed me money. And I kind of like that. There's a parallel, of course, Allan. We've talked about this while watching a Blackhawks game. There's a parallel between rock drumming, playing sports, certainly playing hockey. As you know, my son is an extremely talented, successful drummer for the band Slipknot. And he developed his discipline, his flexibility, and his drive from playing many, many years of hockey. We can get into that, of course, but, that's what the drummer in a band is. He was a goalie, my son, and he still is. We'll talk about that. But as a drummer, you're a lot like the goalie. You've heard the expression, when the team wins, it's the team win. If the team loses, it's the goalie's fault. Well, that's like being a drummer in a rock band. It's a position that I've embraced for now, 60-something years. And I like that being the last line of defense in the music.
So in 2009, on the Working on a Dream tour, you had a conflict between your duties with Conan and what was always known as the Bruce Springsteen exception to all of your contracts. And I remember vividly being at the United Center, and after about half the show, you were off the stage and your son Jay went on stage behind the drums, starts playing a song, and you came out onto the floor and you're standing with the fans, maybe 15, 20 rows back, standing there with your arms folded, watching Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band with Jay Weinberg on drums.
That's right.
What was that like for you?
Well, that has always been an out-of-body experience, and even while nobody likes to be replaced, but when you're replaced by your son, well, there's a double-edged sword element to that. And I was so happy for him when he did that, he was that particular show. He was almost 19, not quite 19. He started playing with Bruce when he was 18, and I'm just as they say in my household, I was kvelling. I was just bursting with pride. He acquitted himself well, and I do attribute that to some degree, a large degree, to the discipline that he developed. Getting up on weekends, 3:00 in the morning to go play hockey. His older sister, Allie, same thing. They both played hockey she played for her high school team. He played for her club team and high school. So it's discipline. And I was thrilled for him because there's no better teacher about life in general than Bruce Springsteen. And, it was interesting how that came about because we did have a scheduling conflict with my going to Los Angeles from New York to do the Tonight Show, right. However brief that was. We had just because of the sort of changeover, there was a change in the schedule. So, and we were going on tour. It was, working on a dream tour. And so I guess it was in December before we played the Super Bowl. I was driving Jay back to college. It's one of my great memories. My phone and car rings. It's Bruce. And, he goes, well, we're working on this thing. And I've been trying to figure it out. You've been trying to figure it out. And I thought, well, he'd seen Jay, my son, play with a band that happened to be his son Evan's favorite band at the time. And it was in a beer and shot bar in New Jersey. And Jay sat in with him. And Bruce saw him that night. And, he saw how good he was. And then that summer, the summer before that, he sat in on Born to Run at Giant Stadium, which was, I had tears streaming down my face because I didn't even know about it. It was a surprise to me. They cooked it up and he just killed it, nailed it. In any case, he calls me on my car when I'm driving Jay back to college. He's a college graduate of Stevens Tech in Hoboken, New Jersey, with honors. And he said, well, I thought, what do you think? What do you think about Jay taking over? And he wasn't asking me as sort of, capital B, capital S, Bruce Springsteen. He was asking me as a father to father. And I said, well, I know what the job entails, and I know what his constant training, dropping down, everything else. And Jay and Allie, we were a true hockey family, and we still are to some extent, but when they were growing up. So I know he's got the discipline and the drive and the work ethic that you need for sports, that he obviously has translated that to music. So yeah, I think he can do it. So and as a matter of fact, he's sitting right next to me. You go, let me talk to him. So I put him on the phone and I'm hearing from Jay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds good. And then he sort of exclaims loudly, expletive deleted. Yeah. You can imagine what he said. And I got off the phone. He hung up. And I said, well, what did Bruce say? He goes, well, he said that, Jay, you might have heard I have a band. And in the band, I've got the best drummer in rock. He's got a scheduling conflict. He gave me your number and said that perhaps, I should ask you if you'd be interested in joining the E Street Band. He really built it up. It was great. And that's when it was expletive deleted. So, it was incredible. It existed for me on a lot of different levels. I had the terrific experience of watching a fantastic drummer play with the E Street Band. No one who's ever been in the E Street Band has seen, the E Street Band play, at least the lineup that I was in, what they call the longtime E Street Band, me, Roy Bittan, Gary Talent, Steve Van Zandt. They've never seen the E Street Band. And I had the opportunity to go out and actually experience it. It was pretty damn good, I must say. And, there were some songs that Jay, he killed on.
Yeah.
And Bruce would say, well, Radio Nowhere, Jay kicked your ass on that one. He owned that song. So, as a dad, you want to hear that.
What I've always noticed about you live in concert, and I've seen you guys probably about 140 times, and you really see it in the just released 1979, the legendary No Nuke shows, the two shows at MSG, and which were incredible. I've just been watching them a lot the last 10 days because it's new and it's fresh. You never take your eyes off of Bruce. And what I noticed with Jay is he had the same focus on Bruce, following him everywhere he goes, even if he goes behind the drum set. You're still watching him. It's incredible. And knowing that Jay was a goalie for so many years, it's very much like a goalie tracking the puck and never taking your eyes off the puck. So when you talk about the training from hockey coming over into his drumming, that must have played some part of it.
Well, that absolutely did, Allan. It's that laser focus. And when you can develop that, and you can develop it, and you can go there, the more you practice what people have called, and I embrace, the idea of flow, where you're in a heightened state of awareness. And I've had athletes say to me, Paul O'Neill, the great Yankee, who's a pal, and he once said, sometimes the baseball looks like a soccer ball, and sometimes it looks like the period at the end of a sentence. And it's much better when it looks like a soccer ball. So, time slows down. You're in the flow. Sports, particularly the way the E Street Band plays, sports is an apt analogy because it's very physical. To do anything for 4 hours at peak intensity, particularly as you get older. I'll be 71 the next time we play. And I may have just made some news, but I will be 71 in 2022. You got to take care of yourself. You recognize, and I've been hurt. I've had eight operations on my hands, 2 back operations. I had my shoulder rebuilt by the doctor who's the doctor for the U.S. Olympic swimming team. And I came to him in New York, Dr. Scott Rodeo, because he rebuilt Eli Manning's shoulder 2 years before Eli won the first Super Bowl. I figured, the same shoulder, right shoulder, and I had just shredded my shoulder. And, fortunately, as you get older, you get wiser, you figure out how to play. But yeah, you can't take your eyes off where the action is happening. And in a lot of cases, and people have asked me about this, but when Bruce finally gets down to a soaking wet T-shirt, he telegraphs, I don't even know if he realizes he does this, but he's so muscular that there's a muscle just under his trapezius that when he's about to do something, now I don't know what it may be, but it's something that I will need to hook up to, that muscle will tense up and I'll see it. I can see it through a wet T-shirt, and it'll just give me an edge for a slight second. And it's like a bit of a tell. And there's certain things, because whether it was me or anybody else, that's the job. It's like the goalie job. Yep. It's the catcher's job. It's the center's job. Those positions have no margin for error. And, when the play on the ice is at the other end, it may look like the goalie doesn't have anything to do, but he is acutely aware of where the action is and what might happen. And that's what it's like on stage for me anyway, with the E Street Band, because I have to watch Bruce. Actually, there's a camera during our shows, there's one camera that is a feed to a little TV monitor that I have mounted on my bass drum, that no matter where he goes, that camera stays on him and gives me a feed. So very often in a stadium, he'll go out to the wings of the little side stages.
Right.
And there's a moment where he disappears from sight, and I'll switch from real-time vision to the monitor. Or in the old days, I used to be able to almost completely turn around when he went behind me. But after 2 unsuccessful back operations from drumming, I use the camera. I don't turn around, and he'll give me a cue, and people will wonder, well, how the hell did I catch that cue? Because the one thing with Bruce on stage is you can be sure of one thing: you can never be sure of what he's going to do, and it's pretty amazing feeling. You're at that heightened state anyway. Right. But, he'll throw something out. I mean, we usually play during a typical show from 32 to 34 songs. And every night, a good 15 of those songs are not on the set list. As a matter of fact, Kevin Buell, his longtime assistant and guitar tech, he keeps all the set lists. They're sort of Xerox, they're copied, and he keeps them all. And he has an original, and then he has what the show became in a book. And when you look at what the show became, it looks like Chris Collinsworth with a telestrator. You've got arrows all over the place, right? And because Bruce, there's so many audibles. We call them audibles. And if you're lucky, he'll tell you what song it is. So, and, very often, I shouldn't say very often, but, it'll happen where he'll get to counting 1, 2, 3, 4. And at 3.5, I don't know what song it is. Stuff has happened so quick.
That's crazy.
I've heard college football players say that the difference between college and pro is they could not believe how fast how much faster everything happens. That's what it's like if being on stage with Bruce and the E Street Band changes, and you have to really be engaged. The other thing is, you'd be amazed if you were dropped onto that stage. And I've actually had musicians, well-known musicians, say this to me. They couldn't believe how relaxed it is. It's sort of like the eye in the hurricane, the stage. Very, very relaxed, but frantic. And I shouldn't say frantic, energized. And that's a really good combination when you can get the kind of, and you see it in pro sports all the time, in college sports, when you're in that space where, that perfect spiral, that impossible shot that somebody made, whether it was some of the new guys or Crosby or Wayne Gretzky, Bruce is a guy we used to go all over to follow the Devils, and went up to Pittsburgh, and Mario Lemieux had just come back. And one of the things that athletes like, people have seen, and of course they have, the Mario Lemieux, the Brady's, the Michael Jordan, they make everybody play better. And Bruce is like that. And he ups the game. And when I saw Mario Lemieux, he was just back from his illness and part owner of the team, and he played with the team. And we were up there, with the kids wearing their Devils shirts, of course. Wherever we went, they wore their Devils shirts, whether it was Philly or Toronto.
Philly can be dangerous wearing a Devils.
Oh, yeah.
They
got abused. Well, Philly was interesting because first they'd see the Devils shirts and fans would abuse them. And then they'd see me and, wait a minute. That's Mighty Max from the E Street Band. And Philly is one of the biggest supporters we've ever had in music, so they sort of then backed off. But I saw Mario Lemieux play, and it looked like he was so good. It looked like the father playing, pond hockey with a group of kids. That's how good he was at his age. And, when he came out of the dressing room, we met him, and he looked like Elvis Presley at his prime. It was just incredible, So hockey has been something that our family through the years really rallied around. It was an activity that we did as a family. In fact, other than going to museums, it was the activity we did, whether it was the club with my son Jay, or high school with my daughter Allie, who was the only young woman, I should say, on the boys varsity team, and who to this day maintains the record of most penalty minutes in the history of her high school.
Amazing. Not only that, Max, but I saw her on stage play keyboards with the E Street Band.
Yes,
I was at that show.
She's an incredible pianist and accordionist and a wonderful singer. Never wanted to do it professionally. She's a producer and journalist for PBS NewsHour, and her specialty is really foreign affairs, as is her husband, who is a CNN commentator and Washington Post columnist, Josh Rogan. But she still plays in a women's league. But she played, she was at a rehearsal when she was like 10, maybe 10 or 11 years old. And she was playing, she took piano lessons. And Bruce heard her playing and then said, well, you got to come up on stage with us sometime. And she did when she was almost 12 and played, I think, Glory Days. But she's got pictures, she and Bruce, she playing a accordion at Nats Stadium in Washington on American land. And they're both wearing these sailor hats, enlisted sailor hats, and caps. And it's a great picture. I'm out of focus in the background, right? And so, both my kids have, played a lot of times with Bruce and the E Street Band. And his, we've had a variety of our children up on stage. It's fun.
Yeah, wow. You talked about Bruce and being up on stage and not knowing what song was coming next. For a good part of since the band was reunited in '99, Bruce would play the Stump the Band game, where he would take signs out of the audience of requests, and he'd show them. He'd always turn around and show it to you. And then you guys would just go and play it. And lots of times there'd be a pause for a full minute or two while Bruce, Nils, and Steve are all trying to figure out what key to play in, the chord, where the chord, which chords to play. And you're all kind of on stage in front of, in an arena, 20,000 people in a stadium in front of 60, 70,000 people. And you're literally on the stage trying to figure out how to play the song. And it's almost like the fan is being given a window into what it must be like in the recording studio with all you guys together.
That's exactly what it's like. And, as I say, the relaxation aids and abets that moment. Usually I'm playing the drums and vamping. And Bruce has said many times that, as long as I know the tune and we can get it started. Now, I don't have to learn chords, and that's a real advantage if you want to play it correctly. But we, and even my Jukebox Band, we've all come out of the New Jersey bar band world where, you had to play 6-7 hours a night in the 60s and early 70s. So you had to know a lot of songs, either know them or know how to fake them. And we got really good at that, really good at faking. And that's a big part of being a musician is faking it. That's why they have these so-called fake books that just give you a melody line. And as long as you have the melody, in my case, if I have the rhythm or the beat, and I've got this thing that if I hear a song once, I can remember it. I remember the drum part. I don't know what it is exactly. I'm sure it's tied into memory, but it's the way my brain works. And I hear a song once and I can play it. And, rock song. And the other thing is you've heard these songs, millions of times on the radio. So it's in your soul. But he said, as long as I know, I know the beat and we'll get through it. And it was the jukebox thing is very similar because while we know all the songs that we pick from, and there's 300 of those songs that the audience picks from, and we generally pay about $25 a night. If there's a song that somebody wants to hear and one or two guys know it, we'll give it a shot. So it's a place where you can really be absolutely fearless. That's the stage, whether it's my little jukebox band or Bruce and the E Street Band, you can be fearless. And as a matter of fact, being fearless is a sort of job requirement. And, it's a place that I'm completely comfortable being. And part of that is because, when you make mistakes, you strike out, you let a goal in, you don't dwell on it. Right. If you see a hockey goalie, they take a sip of water. They have their routines. And I've known some great NHL hockey goalies and players, of course. Everybody's got a little routine. So, as a drummer, you make a mistake, you do it again, and it becomes part of the arrangement. So you learn how to cover your mistake. Drummers are kind of like carpenters molding. When you build a house and use molding, that's where you cover up your mistakes. And the drummer, his job is to smooth over the rough patches and make the transitions. And there's a lot of parallels to sports. That's why a lot of musicians are sports fans, I think, and why a lot of athletes are fans of bands. Look at Bill Walton, who's, the greatest deadhead of them all. And, I don't think there's ever been a concert that Pat Riley could get to and didn't go to.
Right.
And one of the greatest sights consistently is seeing Pat Riley out in the audience about 5 rows back, 6 foot, 8, in front of, Clarence's position. And it's still Clarence's position, with this look of awe on his face. I love that because, we go to sporting events and you see, it's a long season, whatever it is, and you got to be there every night, and Bruce's ethos is that we may have been playing our 10,000th show, but it may be the first time you're seeing us, and you, because of your price of admission, deserve the best we can give that night. And that night is the only thing that matters. Yesterday doesn't matter. Tomorrow doesn't matter. Right here, right now. And it's a really good message, I think.
But that's also part of your ethos, because I've seen your Jukebox Band play 2 or 3 times, once here in California in San Juan Capistrano.
Yeah.
And you guys were on fire. How many songs, just to give everybody an idea of what's going on? You've got this giant screen scrolling rock and roll classics. How many are there? Several hundred.
Yeah, it's about 300.
Wow.
And I change it up every 6 months or so. We take some out. And I also have a deep bench with my jukebox because, the working musician has to do whatever job comes along. It has to do a lot of jobs if you want to have a career at it. I have the incredible blessing and great fortune to be a member of the E Street Band for almost 50 years. Yeah. But when I'm doing my own thing, people have to work. So I have subs. I have to, some guys sit out and I got another guy to come in. So the way I run my career is, and the older you get, I think you lose a lot of your expectations. And I don't have a crew. I set up the drums. There are different drum set every night. I tune the drums. I work with the lighting guy if there is one. If there isn't one, I say, you turn the lights on. At the end of the night, you turn the lights off. And, it's not about all that. It's about getting people up out of their seats, particularly pre-COVID. Now I encourage them to just move left to right vigorously while they're sitting down. But my job is to get them up and dancing and move them physically. And there's no such thing as a bad audience. It's your job as a performer to do whatever you can do to get the audience involved and engaged in what it is you're doing. You're doing the show. And I learned that from Bruce, that, you may be dead tired. You may have ridden the bus all night long, whatever it is. The only thing that matters is showtime, whether it's sports, athletics, music, anytime where basically your ass is on the line, everything else has got to fade away. And when you apply that to being in a band, making music, whether it's a backup band, a democracy in a band like, the Beatles, or U2, or as Bruce says, a benevolent dictatorship, as the street band is, when you're all pushing in the same direction, it's a marvelous thing that is fueled by that intensity and that energy. And I think that's why people want to hear us play, because it's not just a show, it's our lives up there. And it's real. It's very real. And, we take that idea that, we want to give you every night more than your money's worth. And these are sort of mottos that Bruce has always thrown out through the years, that you come to our show, 30 songs are going to equal a bigger experience than just 30 individual songs. Your life should be transformed in some way. We blow into your town, we, blow the roof off the place, and then we're gone. And for us, it's transformative. And we hope for the audience it's transformative. And, there are very few bands, not very many, that have stayed together as long as we have, with largely the same personnel, and been able to dig down and be creative and be performers, and still dig down into the material. This Letter to You film and album that came out a couple of years ago, that was a very good example of that. As a matter of fact,
you guys were in the studio for 4 days.
Yeah. Wow. We did 16 songs. I think 13 or 14 were released. And it was just, 5-6 hours, just all business. And that's the way we like it. All business. There's frivolity at the end, and there may be a shot or two of tequila in a very controlled way. But as I said, you can't have any expectations. You got to stay real loose. In fact, there's a moment in that where we had kind of talked down what we were going to do. As you can see, there wasn't a lot of rehearsal. He comes out, he plays the song on his acoustic, and here's the riff, like Born to Run. Ba-bum-bum-bum. That's the riff. Songs are built around riffs. They're sort of our plays. And you build off of that, when you're in the huddle with a quarterback and he's looking at his wrist, and, it's this shorthand. I've often marveled at how everybody in a split second can get what play it is, 98% of the time, right? And then the other 2%, you have to adjust. And so we're recording, tape is running, and in the middle of the song, Bruce just changes the arrangement as we're recording. Wow. And I'm only about 3 feet away from him. So I'm very much hooked up, and that's the way it's got to be. If you don't get the drums, you got to get the drums if you're recording live, particularly. That's the foundation. And it's whether it's me or anybody else, got to get the drum part right. So, and then you can, we did everything live. I don't think there were hardly any overdubs on that Letter to You. Maybe a vocal line here or two, here or there,
And you didn't play live since the Born in the USA sessions, the 83, 82, 83, 84. Well, you played live in the
rhythm. As a band, as a full band, we hadn't done that since the original 2 weeks of recording in 1982. Although we did do we did 2 songs in Los Angeles on, I forget which tour it was, Kingdom of Days and You're My Special Day, is it? Or You're My, there were 2 songs we did. We just went into the studio.
Lucky Day?
Yeah, You're My Lucky Day. And the whole band was in there recording simultaneously. And we did one recording session in Australia with not only the whole band, the whole tour.
Really?
That was where we had the 21-piece band, all the singers and everything. We were all in the studio and we cut 2 tracks. But the E Street Band, the last time we'd all been in the studio was the first and second week of April 1982. Although when we made all the records we did, like The Rising, Magic, working on a dream, the sort of Brendan O'Brien produced records. It was the live rhythm section, me, Roy, and Gary, and Bruce. And then, Steve, Nils, Patty came in, Danny, thankfully was able to come in on Magic and, put his magic on that. Clarence, of course, and overdubbing. So the rhythm section, I've done recording sessions with Bruce at his house, where it's just me and him. It's just, acoustic guitar and drums, and, finish it later. You get an idea, call me up and say, hey, come on. I'm always happy to be enlisted to play on his solo stuff. I mean, it's really all solo stuff, but extra E Street Band.
Right. I know a lot of people don't know this, but you actually played drums on some of the most impactful songs on Bat Out of Hell with Meatloaf.
I did.
Back in the day. Paradise in the Dashboard Light is yours.
Yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth, and Bat Out of Hell.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. Man.
Right. Can you tell us anything about those sessions?
Yeah, I played those 3 songs, and then my good friend Todd Rundgren fired me. and Todd is a good friend, and he was just very deservedly inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Incredible musician, producer, songwriter, singer. One of my favorite all-time songs with the Jukebox Plays is by the Nazz, which was his original band in Philadelphia. Open My Eyes. Incredible song. Right. But in any case, he wanted to go in a different direction and use his band, which he did on two out of 3 Ain't Bad and 1 or 2 other songs. But yeah, I played on some of those some big records. I actually am on the drums on the number 1 and 2 singles on the Billboard charts when the charts really mattered back in the 80s, with Bonnie Tyler, Total
Eclipse of the Heart.
Yeah. Air Supply, Making Love Out of Nothing at All. And they were number 1 and 2 at the same time. I also have the distinction of playing drums on the only unsuccessful Barbra Streisand single. That is some sort of dubious distinction, but you take the good with the bad. And listen, it was just she overdubbed to the rhythm track, but it was still a thrill for me to appear on a Barbra Streisand song, which was written by the late Jim Steinman, who wrote all the Meatloaf and his own material. Incredible artist
songwriter
he was. But yeah, the Meatloaf record really took on a life of its own. I think it's the largest selling rock album in history. Yeah, it's either that or Born in the USA. Born in the USA might have nudged it out. I'm not sure.
I think it did, but Bat Out of Hell is sitting right now at around, I believe, 57 million units sold worldwide, and Born in the USA is eclipsed 60 million.
Well, listen, if it keeps going, those records are going to be successful.
Max, I think you're onto something.
Yes.
Stick to it, man. Stick to it.
That's actual sales, which that's not downloads. That's not streaming. That's actual hard sales,
right,
of product. And we actually still sell a lot of vinyl, which is kind of nice, because if you get into vinyl, and young people love vinyl. My son's been listening to vinyl his entire life, and listens to it on a hi-fi, like a piece of furniture, right? Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I've been very blessed to be a part of some records that really had legs and that moved a lot of people, and it never ever gets old. It's even I hear something I did on the radio. It's a thrill. I can remember when Born to Run came out, we were playing in Santa Barbara, and it was out, and we hadn't heard it on the radio. And our road manager had a station wagon, and the knock on my door, and it was Bruce, and he wanted to go get something to eat in the hotel we were staying in. It was right on the beach. And so we're driving to Denny's or someplace to get something to eat. It was about 2 a.m, had the radio on, and Jungle Land comes on the radio. FM radio, right? And he pulled over the side of the road and was sitting there in the darkness listening to that for the first time. It was the first time I heard it. I think it was the first time he heard it on the radio. And my memory is that scene is right out of a Bruce Springsteen song. You know, kicking the radio up loud and the lights are off and you're just, those sounds coming magical, just coming over the radio. The first time you hear yourself on the radio. I made a record in 1969 that I actually did hear on AM radio. One song, one time. And they told me when it was going to play. And, it was a major hit in my town. Didn't go very much further than that.
Wow. Well,
wow.
I had seen, sorry, Adam, I had seen, Max, you talking very eloquently about some of your heroes when you were, motivated you to play drums, and the guys that you revered. People like DJ Fontana, who played for Elvis Presley, and Ed Shaughnessy with Doc Severinsen's band on Tonight Show, and of course the great Buddy Rich, and I think it's very similar to athletes, hockey players who grew up worshiping the players that they were seeing play in the NHL as they were playing the game 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And now they're there and they periodically take a deep breath and think of the times that maybe their dad brought them to a game and they're watching some of the legends who are now long retired, but very well remembered and respected. And, you carry on that tradition from the greats from the very beginning of music, popular music, rock and roll, jazz, blues, and take all of that and bring that out to your almost 50 years in the E Street Band. It's really quite remarkable.
Well, if you're honest with yourself and you've been fortunate enough to have any kind of longevity, you realize that throughout your life, particularly when, as Abraham Lincoln said, the artillery is getting louder. You recognize you stood and you're standing on the shoulders of giants. And I can talk all day about the people who have inspired me in music and drumming and architecture and very many fields who broke through and were masters of what they did, and they worked at it. And, you talk about athletes, and both my parents were phenomenal athletes. My mother later on in life, taught gym for 46 years, but when she was young, she was, you name it, she was a great athlete. My father, must have been 26 or 7, it went to Central High School, famous high school in Philadelphia. A lot of athletes came out of there. And he was the all-state pitcher that season. He played baseball, football at the University of Pennsylvania. He was a guard. He swam. He played tennis. And he was a fanatic baseball fan. And had the Depression not happened, he might have thought about, and he was good enough to be to get into the big leagues. And he never lost his love for baseball. He was born in 1909. And I once asked him when I was a teenager, did he ever see, they got to do a book report on Lou Gehrig. Huh. I said, did you ever see, Lou Gehrig or Babe Ruth play? He goes, Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth, of course, I saw them play all the time. He goes, Max, I saw Ty Cobb and Honus Wagner play. Wow. When he was like, a little boy. His father took him, he was Philly all the way. So, they grew up in an era where the sports were the beginning. My father would talk about Red Grange and the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and the things that impressed him in athletes and athletics as a child and as a young, teen who was very focused on sports and a very good athlete. Knew a lot of professional athletes when I was growing up. And his business was a summer camp in the Pocono Mountains. And he knew all the Philadelphia teams. So we had all the pros in the 40s, 50s, and 60s come up for a weekend in the country to do clinics. So we had Wilt Chamberlain, Guy Rogers, who was, one of the great playmakers for the Philadelphia team, for, Philadelphia Warriors. Right. I met Wilt Chamberlain when I was 10 years old, and it was, incredible. I remember waking up one Saturday morning, and my father was doing a business deal, and in my living room was Elston Howard from the Yankees, and I couldn't believe it. He got me Y.A. Tittle's autograph. Wow. So sports, and I was a fanatic football fan when I was a kid, while I was taking drum lessons, and I was a huge fan of. I taught myself how my father bought me a book on place kicking, and it was by Lou Groza, who was the place kicker on the Cleveland Browns, and he wrote a book on place kicking. That's when they used to have the square toe it was metal,
right?
And I taught myself how to place kick because my parents would never let me play contact sports because I was playing drums. They didn't want me to get hurt, and I was actually very upset at the time. But now, as I approach my 71st birthday, boy, am I glad they didn't let me play contact. Drumming with Bruce Springsteen is contact sport enough for me. But I taught myself how to place kick, and I won the kicking part of the punt, pass, and kick competition, which was a nationwide competition in 1961. I could kick, at the time I could kick 45 yards, 50 yards. Not on a tee. And I still have my football and tee. So there's hope for me yet. In my house, Sundays are devoted to watching as much football as possible. And as Mark Stein, who's my dear friend and manager, who you guys know, says, well, you love football, but really you love quarterbacks. And I do. I love quarterbacks. I just think it's, I love every position. And my father, as I said, was a guard, and he had the broken nose to show it. And he played football when helmets were optional.
Right.
Right.
And just the bar, just the one bar?
No bar. It was just
no bar.
Leather. It was like the old leather,
oh, wow.
aviator hat. And he did. Very few. Like if you wore a helmet, he played high school football, no helmet. We went to University of Pennsylvania and made the varsity team as a guard. He was big. He was in those days, he was 6'2", 230 and strong, his nose was mashed to the left. It was mashed to the right. And, so sports and music were the big things in my family. And there's so many parallels, as we've discussed on this show of yours, that I think in my own life, it translated because, when you get to know athletes and when you watch enough sports, the game opens up to you. But that's what it was with hockey. People somehow don't, and people who are not familiar with hockey don't know how to watch hockey. But once you watch enough games, and I've seen hundreds of games, everything slows down and you see the strategy, and it's incredible experience. Hockey players are among both the nicest and strongest athletes out there. And, one of our great experiences, we played in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, when they were filming the movie, Paul Newman filming the movie Slapshot.
Yep.
And we were playing a concert there, right? On a day where they weren't filming. So we all got in the band Hanson brother shirts, hockey shirts, right?
The Chiefs jerseys?
Yes. And if you see the movie, the Hanson brothers, so, I don't particularly see it, but everybody in the old days used to say, you kind of look like one of those guys with the black ornament. So I would wear this Hanson, Chiefs shirt. And Jay, my son, when he was getting into hockey, he never went anywhere without his autographed Devils jersey. And my daughter too. They had autographs all over it. He saw that and he goes, "Where did you get that?" Because Slapshot was one of their favorite movies, right? Well, we happened to, they all came down to the show and we got these, this was like 70, It was in the 70s. And so little things like that, you know. My son Jay still, he can't do it when he's on tour, but he organized a men's team in East Nashville called the East Side Hellhounds. He got endorsement deals with the major equipment suppliers. And, you know, in his day, goalie pads were a lot different than they are now. They covered a lot less territory. And he still has right on his chest right here, puck marks where it got past the puck. But we were very lucky to follow, you know, New Jersey Devils hockey and get to know the guys during, you know, we were, you know, went to every game for about 6 years until my kids graduated high school and went off on their own and, you know, season tickets. And it was just an incredible experience.
I remember you were very close with Bobby Holik. You were very close with him.
Yeah, very close with Bobby and Renee Holik. And Bobby is one of the most incredibly talented and intelligent people I've ever met. It could have been a rocket scientist if he wasn't such a bruiser on the hockey, you know, on the ice. And someone from Detroit once said to me, one of the most frightening sights you can see on the ice is Bobby Holik bearing down on you. Almost 6'5", 245 pounds of nothing but muscle, and nothing fazed him. You know, you could hit him in the face, he wouldn't flinch. And I learned a lot from Bobby Holik, and you know, it was wonderful. I did an event for the Devils on their 20th anniversary of the 20 years ago when they won the Stanley Cup in 2000, and they had all the players come back 20 years later. And here I am, you know, with Marty Brodeur and, you know, all the guys who played on that team, Scott Gomez and Ken Danico and Scott Stevens. And, you know, it was great because we were very fortunate. I had relationships with the team and, you know, when you go into an arena in New Jersey and your picture's on the wall, you can pretty much walk wherever you want, you know.
Yeah, and the old Continental Airlines Arena, Brendan Byrne. Yeah,
the old Brendan Byrne, which was a great venue for hockey. No obstructions, and it was all seats. It was not luxury boxes. It was all seats, and it was a great place to play. We loved playing those old places. Sports Arena in L.A. and you know, the Forum. So in L.A.
The Spectrum.
Oh God, yes. Yeah. Of course, Cobo Hall. All the old classic, you know, McNichols Arena, Denver, you know, Riverfront Stadium. I think a lot of them aren't there anymore, but, you know, so we managed to play a lot of the old barns, as they call them. You know, they were drafty, but they had a vibe. And, you know, it's still just an incredible peak experience for me to play, and a peak experience to play with Bruce and the E Street Band.
No kidding. When they set you up in those old barns, you know, backstage, you know, we've got this vision of what it's like to be a rock star backstage. Are you guys sitting in the old dressing rooms? Is it cold, drafty cement block, or do they dress it up a little?
No, it's like a dirty, smelly, you know, I mean, they'll put some curtains up.
Oh, that's nice.
Black sort of curtains and curtain things off. But yeah, it's the locker rooms of the arenas. It's not usually it's always the visiting team. You know, it's never the home team. And, you know, we'll set up there, and, you know, we're not really in there very long. But Pete Townsend of The Who once said, he came on tour with us for 3 weeks one summer. And he said in an interview that, you know, backstage at a Bruce Springsteen show, it's like being in a hospital. It's so anti-rock and roll. And it is. It's quiet. It's clean. It's orderly. There's no drama. There's no people, you know. And it's true. It's just all business. All business. We come in. Sometimes, you know, most of the time we do a little sound check, which I think is mainly to make sure everybody shows up. And, you know, we'll screw around. We'll play some old songs, some old rock and roll or whatever. And I had a funny experience at Giant Stadium, the old Giant Stadium. I got there early and I was messing about on the drums, and Gary was there and Steve was there. And we started playing A Whole Lot of Love, the Led Zeppelin song, just to, jam around on it. And suddenly the rumor started in the parking lot that Jimmy Page was playing with was going to play with Bruce and the E Street Band that night. So we were just messing around on A Whole Lot of Love. And that was kind of funny, but there's a million stories, and eventually they'll all be told. And we keep telling them to each other in the band. So through my good friend, Mark Stein, I've had the great fortune to be at his Joe DiMaggio fundraising baseball games.
Right.
Where he brings out all the old veterans and who still, it's wonderful being in the locker room. I mean, there's pictures of me wearing the uniform, and I'm in the locker room with Brooks Robinson and some of the really famous baseball players that I grew up with who, I'll tell you one thing, Minnie Minoso could not run. But man, I stood behind him, the batting cage, when he was hitting, he was still a power hitter. It was very impressive.
Wow.
And he couldn't run, Earl Weaver threw out the first pitch. He was like 94 years old. He kind of dribbled halfway to the mound, But a lot of parallels between sports and rock and roll and the muscularity of it. And I'll tell you one thing, Bernie Williams, if he hadn't been a phenomenal baseball player, absolutely could have made it as a professional musician. He sat in several times with my TV band, and he was more on top of it than most professional musicians who ever sat in with us. And whatever we threw at him, he caught. Very impressed with his musical ability. And Paul O'Neill was, and I'm sure still is an avid drummer. He's got a drum set. We went to an old, I guess they call them the old timers games. And we went, and I took my son, it was family day, and took Jay, and he was a little boy. And I didn't know it, but they had a music practice room under the bleachers at Yankee Stadium. And this is the old Yankee Stadium. And so I go in there and I'm jamming with, I forget who was playing bass, but Paul was playing drums. Bernie Williams was playing guitar. And it was a thrill for me. I mean, these guys, major leaguers. And I don't, if you're an American male who's my age, to be around major leaguers still, it was a big thrill. Seeing Michael Jordan play was transcendent for me.
Yep.
Seeing that level of commitment and expertise, we're just talking about pure physical prowess and understanding the game. And, seeing Scott Niedermeyer get to top speed in a step and a half, and he was the best skater on the Devils. We had a great experience. We went to an all-star game in Denver, the whole family, and we met Gordie Howe. And so we're having dinner in the hotel, and a young guy comes up to me, and this was back must have been either the late 90s or early 2000s, big fan of the Conan O'Brien show. And he's talking, he asked my autograph. He's talking to me, and, he's reciting bits I've done, comedy bits. And he asked me to do my deadpan stare, and did that for him. He goes, I'm here with my family and my grandfather. And would you come over and say hello? Would you mind? He goes, I said, sure. So as soon as we're done, I'll come over and say hello. So we go over, and I notice his grandfather's wearing this green jacket. And I have no idea who he is. And he introduces me to his parents, his sister, I guess it was. And this is my grandfather, Ted Lindsay.
Wow.
Oh.
And
cool.
Yeah, so my son, whoa, Ted Lindsay, right? So, and he had to be in his 80s, and he was fit as a fiddle.
Yep.
And I'm sorry to say, I was impressed. Of course, he's in the Hall of Fame. I was impressed. That was his jacket. So I didn't quite know. I called Mark Stein. I said, I met Ted Lindsay tonight. You go, you met Ted Lindsay? And, the production line, right? And he was giving Jay and Allie, my kids, tips. And he told both of them, and I asked them their positions, but he told Allie, who was played defense, you need to be within 2 strides, you need to be at your top speed. That should be your goal. And that was like words of wisdom. So, we've had some great experiences as a family in sports.
Oh, man.
That's incredidy. Wow. Well, Max, you've been so generous with your time. I could talk with you all night, but I know you probably have other things to do. Before letting you go, I just want to mention that on December the 11th, you and your Jukebox Band will be playing at the Mayo Performing Arts Center in Morristown, New Jersey, and December 17 and 18 at the Count Basie Center for the Arts in lovely Red Bank, New Jersey.
Red Bank, New Jersey was sort of my hometown. And, that should be great. It's always great to play there. You never know exactly what's going to happen or who might show up. And we always have some people sitting in, and that should be a lot of fun. And I'm going to be playing, in your town somewhere. I do about 5 or 6 shows a month, and it keeps me sharp. And as I said, it keeps me closely aligned with Tom Brady's motto of, if you stay prepared, you'll be prepared. If you stay ready, you'll be ready. So I'm ready for anything that comes my way.
So are we. So are we.
Pleasure talking to you guys tonight.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Max. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the incredible stories, and look forward to seeing you further on up the road.
Well, as the man says, you will see me further on up the road. Take care, and thank you for having me.
Got it. Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Max.